They'd never really seen Black people before, most of them at that point. And so when they established churches here, there are photos of this from the early days. So they had this church box that they would carry, the pastor would carry. And have you ever seen one of these?
No.
Okay, I'll send you a photo so you see what I'm talking about. And in the box, so it's a wooden box with a lid, it opens up. And in the box, there's a Bible, there's a cloth, there's maybe the communion cups, perhaps that kind of thing.
Yes.
And there's ammunition and there's a gun.
Why would they bring ammunition and a gun?
Because they were afraid. So it wasn't the animals that they were afraid of.
Hey dolls, welcome to Unfiltered with myself, Sihle Makhanya, where we have honest and unfiltered conversations with people from different walks of life where they share their stories without feeling judged or looked down upon. Enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered with myself, Sihle Makhanya. So on today's episode, I'm always excited to interview people and the guests that I have, but today's one is absolutely outstanding and exceptional. I've got Gogo Nomadlozi Buthelezi, also formerly known as Gogo Christa Gumede. Gogo came from the USA to South Africa and has a very interesting journey on how she ended up becoming a traditional healer. And so on today's episode, I just wanted us to go and delve into her journey, especially as a white woman, and how she's been able to navigate through African traditional healing, and also educate a person like myself who grew up in a Christian home, 100% Christian home, very staunch Christian home, about African ancestry and how we can marry both our beliefs and tradition and our religion. So welcome, Gogo.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. I'm well. I'm happy to be with you.
Thank you so much for accepting my invite. So I think first of all, I just would like to know, and for the viewers that are watching, how did Christa, Umam Christa, become Gogo all the way from the USA now to being in South Africa?
That is a long story, and that's what my book is about. But the very briefest answer is ubizo.
Yes.
It was a calling. The in-between answer is that I don't really ever remember a time in my life when I didn't want to be here. As a young child, I would look at my arm in the sun and think, hey, well, what happened here?
What happened? Really?
I got like sunburned. I grew up on the beach. It was in a cold area, so just in the summer, but I would get sunburned, and I remember thinking, this is just not right.
Yeah.
And I always had an interest in Africa, and quite early, quite specifically South Africa. I always knew it was, as a child, I thought at the bottom of Africa.
Okay.
So I knew that. And in fact, I got assigned a school report when I was young, maybe grade 2, that they chose a country, or a country, I guess, that we had to do a report on. And I got Antarctica, and I was very happy because that was closest to the bottom of Africa. So yeah, so it was always a yearning inside. And it was at a time, and I grew up in a family that there was a lot of racial tension, there was a lot of bigotry in my family, and I had a few Black people in my life, but not many, and so it didn't sit well with those around me, and it was confusing, and I grew up in a very difficult situation, emotionally. And physically, there was a lot of abuse and a lot of trauma. And I always had ancestors with me. I thought everyone did. I didn't understand that people didn't, even though I also grew up in a very staunch Christian home, and in fact, almost became a minister. I am an ordained elder in the Presbyterian Church. So that was part of my path as well. And I think it makes me uniquely equipped, to do the work I do now, because I understand both sides. So it was a long time coming, and I learned to suppress it. And I, growing up in the 70s and 80s, self-medicated like everyone did. Those were fine times for that. And just forgot about it for a long time until I went through a personal, really deep crisis as an adult. And the ancestors came back to me in a way that I really couldn't deny. And then eventually that led me here.
Yeah. Gogo, I just want to know, first of all, because you also just mentioned that you grew up in a very staunch Christian home. How did you realize or know that you had ancestors around you, as opposed to what us as Christians usually refer to as the Holy Spirit? Because I know just from the research that I've done that there's a huge distinction between the Holy Spirit and ancestors. And considering where you come from, how were you able to be aware that, okay, these are my ancestors that are coming through to me?
Well, as I said, so my first really clear memories of hanging out with my ancestors was when I was about 5 years old. We moved into a place where my father was a caretaker for a big estate. So our house was a small cottage, and then behind it, there was a small potting shed, like a gardening shed. But it was, it had a roof and windows and a doors, proper size, not too different than a traditional roundhouse here in size, a little bit bigger. There was a bomb shelter underneath. But up top, there was a fireplace, and we had a forest behind us. And I would, in many, many plants in a garden, and I would pick things. I was picking muti, and no one ever taught me. And I would make these concoctions, my family called them, there, without fire, obviously. I was pretending. And when I was doing that, that ancestors were teaching me. I called them the old people. Because that's what there was no cultural, it's not like had I grown up here, my gift would have been seen very early, but I didn't have any of that.
Yes.
And because of my parents' prejudice, we didn't have anyone close to us, except there was a Black couple who were the maid and the butler at the estate where my father worked. So I did have them, but they were very Christian as well. So I don't think I ever talked to them about it. I just assumed everyone had old people. And I remember, so from 5 on, I do remember very clearly them being with me until I was a teenager and stopped paying attention. It's possible that because things were so difficult at home and my parents weren't really capable of parenting me, that they came, to assure that I was all right. To protect and support me. That's kind of how I look at it. Sihle, I have to say, I don't think any of us are supposed to fully understand this as human beings. I don't think we are, but this is my take on it, and that's all I can do. So at the same time, I was going to Sunday school every Sunday, to church every Sunday, all of that. And the pastor and his wife and their kids were very close family friends. So I also had that going on at the same time. It was when I was 7 years old, I had to go up to the big city. I grew up on a peninsula, almost an island called Cape Cod, and the city, Boston, was an hour and a half away. It was a big deal. We never went there, and I only went there for surgeries and things, so I didn't really like it. But I had to go for a surgery when I was 7, and I had to stay there by myself. My parents left me up there alone for a week at 7.
Wow.
Because they had to take care of the other children. So, this was part of why all this happened. So when I got back, someone said to me, "Oh, you're so brave to do that." I think my teacher came to visit and said, "Oh, you're so brave to do that. What a brave girl." And I said, "No, I was fine. The old people were with me." And my mother was in the room, and my teacher said, "What old people?"
What old people?
Yeah. And I said, the old people that like your old people, but my old people, not yours. And this conversation, then my mother, I literally got beaten for it later. For first of all, speaking of it to someone, because we're always supposed to look normal and good. And secondly, because my mother's family was very scared of anything different. So that was the first time I learned I needed to keep it to myself.
Wow.
But it was just a very natural, my story, I'm a big follower of Baba Credo Mutwa's work and some other African healers and spiritualists. My story is really not, I went on to get very sick, those kinds of things. It's not that different than here. It's just that because I didn't have any reference for this culturally, it became an internal thing to me.
For you.
And I think I developed a very strong relationship with my ancestors because it was just me and them.
And them, yes. I think
and I knew I wasn't supposed to talk about it to anyone. So I had to keep it to myself.
Keep it to yourself. Yeah. I think for me, the one thing that has really, that really stands out about your story and just about where we are as Black Africans is that obviously you're a white woman, and we've been raised to believe that ancestors don't exist or that they're demonic, and that also on the other side we've also been taught that colonization wiped out our ancestral beliefs, and basically we got whitewashed to believe in Christianity. And one of the things that I wouldn't really say that I'm struggling with, but one of the things that I've been trying to really discover is the actual reality in is African tradition real? Or were we really whitewashed by Christianity? And to anyone that's watching this, I know my mom will be watching. Yes, I'm still, Christian. I'm a born again, but just trying to discover that. So as a white person, and from your perspective, how do you explain it to a person like myself who was raised to believe this and in this way?
Yeah. That's really well put. Thank you. There is a third belief that I would add, that even Black Africans who do believe in ancestors and in African spirituality believe that white people do not have ancestors. So that's another aspect of it that I would add. So someone coming from a more traditional background than yours is still going to have trouble with me because of that.
Yes.
All right. Hi, Mama. To all the mamas, with a great deal of respect and an understanding that Jesus and I are just fine. And that I also see, I'm not a church basher. I think that I bridge a lot of this. And I think that's one reason people find it helpful to work with me, because I don't make one thing wrong and one thing right. I don't really believe in black and white thinking at all. I don't think, how can I, whether I'm black or white or purple, how can I tell you that your belief system is wrong? How can I possibly know what was intended for you to believe? But here's how I see it. And sometimes that's helpful.
Yeah.
I believe, whether you call him or her God or Nkulu Nkulu or anything in between, that there is one, source for all of us. And I believe that people have been, since time began, and probably will be for the rest of time, questioning this. It's a big part of what we do as human beings. And I think maybe it's part of the reason we come here, I'm not sure. So Christianity, while I want to separate Christianity and church. So I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe that he lived. I believe that he was a very good man and that he was an excellent teacher, a sensusi, if you will. I have always believed in Jesus Christ, and that won't change. I believe there's a wonderful book that's in English. I don't know if it's ever been translated into isiZulu, called The Shack. I don't know the author's name. it's a fiction,
Oh, yeah.
but it's a man who loses his young daughter through difficult ways. Not that I guess there are good ways to do that. And he finds these characters who basically represent the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, but in human form. They're characters in the novel. And the one who represents Christ says at some point, I never said anything about these big crystal churches. I never said anything about this. I never said anything about that. You know, I don't believe that Jesus came in order to set up a great number, if you think of all the different variations on the Christian church. You know, I often wonder what he would think of all of this. So I don't want to, we can't get into theology in general in the time that we have, but let's just take South Africa and colonization. And I do agree with the belief that colonization whitewashed or attempted to whitewash the tribal people. And I very much hope in some small way to begin to set the process in place for righting that wrong. I am, you know, you've seen me in situations where I am the only Lungu in a very big room. You know, my world is I live a fairly Zulu life.
Yes.
And I do that on purpose, not through cultural appropriation, not because I want to act Black, which is a more American thing, nothing like that, but because I fully believe that I have the ability to help the tribal people in South Africa regain their sovereignty and right that misdirect, that whitewashing, so that they can bring their innate gifts and the gifts of South Africa to the world. Because I believe that Africa and South Africa specifically have a great deal to bring to the world, rather than this whole idea that, you know, growing up in the West, we have to go to Africa and save the poor Africans.
Save the
really, like, what are they saving us from? You know,
we're okay.
Any more than in some Christian churches. I moved when I was not quite 18 to the American South, and I attended a number of Black, you know, very deep Southern churches. And there were a lot of TV evangelists, there still are, with the, you know, healed, be saved. You know, what are they saving us from? We're human beings. We act as human beings.
Yes.
So, all that said, the churches in South Africa in the early days, well, so here's another perspective that I write about in the book. When I came here, I came for a month. I went back to the States. I came back a month later. And my initial, what I told everyone was I was coming back for 3 months. But when my American friends and friends from the Europe and UK saw that I wasn't really coming back, they asked me if I was all right. And I said, sure. And they said, well, did you bring everything that you need? And I said, well, like what? And they said, well, like, do you have enough I'm not kidding you. At least 6 people said, do you have enough toothbrushes and toothpaste?
What? Oh my goodness.
This was in 2016.
What?
Now, I was living in the bush, as you know, but even in the bush.
Yes.
So what I did was I took a gourd branch and I chewed the end as I'd been taught, and I took some ash and put it in my hand and sent them a photo and told them I was fine.
Are you fine?
But if you can imagine in 2016 that's how people from abroad, white people, and even Black people actually, think of life in South Africa, then imagine in the 1600s and 1700s when white people were on a ship for I don't even know how long, you know, to get here. That you can imagine the fear and all of that, you know, that they would go through. So here they were in deepest, darkest Africa, with people who didn't look like them, that they had been told weren't really people, with wild animals all around them, with all of that, and their own, and having the grief of having left their homes and their families, perhaps. They were afraid. They were very, very afraid.
Yes.
you've traveled the world, so you know what it's like to go into, a different society in a different place and with a different language. You're surrounded by a different language now that you don't understand. You know how destabilizing that can be.
Yes,
And you can
it's very
imagine back then.
uncomfortable.
Exactly. So they came, they were very uncomfortable. They were very scared. They had been warned and told tales, and, they'd seen a lion eviscerate someone in front of them probably, or something like that. They'd never really seen Black people before, most of them at that point. And so when they established churches here, there are photos of this from the early days, when they went out and they established churches. And churches back then were often in people's homes or were in buildings somewhere. So they had this church box that they would carry, the pastor would carry. And have you ever seen one of these?
No.
Okay, I'll send you a photo so you see what I'm talking about. And in the box, so it's a wooden box with a lid, it opens up. And in the box, there's a Bible with a cloth, there's maybe the communion cups, perhaps that kind of thing.
Yes.
And there's ammunition and there's a gun.
What? For why would they bring ammunition and a gun?
Because they were afraid. And a large part of what they were afraid, these were handguns, obviously couldn't fit a rifle in there.
Yes.
So it wasn't the animals that they were afraid of.
Wow. Wow, I didn't know this. But Gogo, I've got so many questions in my mind right now.
Let me just finish this thought. So
yes,
with that in mind, and I see the shock, with that in mind, that begins to tell you what the churches here were founded on. Right. So when I do sessions with, and in COVID times, I've been doing Zoom sessions with, Oldham Kulus and, chickens going in and out. And are you Johnny? So what their ancestors show me often, what I see is regret for following that from those days, for following the church, but they literally felt like they didn't have a choice, like they would be.
Yes. Yes.
They didn't. So people join the church not through, perhaps someone like who's born again today, who wakes up from a dream and realizes, I need to change my ways and the church is going to help me, which is a fine thing.
Yes.
But back then, it was more through intimidation and through perhaps survival. And many of those white people, because their faith in Jesus Christ and in Christianity and in the church sustained them through this great journey here and through life in the bush and, all that they went through. Many of them, perhaps, we can't know for sure, but my sense is that a lot of them did it meaning well. They meant well.
That's true.
They wanted to share this huge comfort that came to them. But the unfortunate part, and had they introduced it as an adjunct to the traditional African spirituality that had been in place for, eons, that would have been one thing. But rather, they made traditional practices and beliefs and spirituality and ancestors in that mix evil. They introduced the concept of hell and told people that they would go to hell if they considered if they continued with the practices that their forebears had been doing for thousands of years. That to me is where the problem is. That's the problem. Not that they introduced Christianity, but that it was forced on people on pain of death.
That's true.
And that what they had always believed has been made evil. I think I'm not really white enough, but I just never have understood why white people think that it's okay to go to different parts of the world and try to make everyone do things their way. I just don't get it. But there is a strong, strong force. And I think the force behind it almost always is fear.
But I just, considering where we come from, I guess, as the world, because every single part of the world has experienced some form of colonization. And I don't want you to take offense to this, but it's always been white people trying to colonize other racial groups. And considering that background, does Gogo ever think, well, my ancestors are white? Do your ancestors have any form of regret if they do come through to you, the white ancestors? Or like I listened to one of your interviews that you've got Native American ancestry. Are those the ancestors that carry you through? Because there's a lot of hurt and pain that white people have inflicted on Black people in the past. Yes, right now we may be going on a road to healing, but we can never ignore where we come from. And I always wondered, how do those ancestors feel, considering everything that they did to my ancestors?
These are good questions. And as I said, I don't understand it either. And I appreciate you not trying to offend me. You won't offend me by anything, don't worry. But because honestly, I don't stand in that camp. It's not where I belong. I tried to belong there for a very long time, nearly killed me several times. When Baba Gumede, when second or third visit I had with him when I came here, he was a Sangoma and Nyanga, and also believed in Christ as well. And our belief systems were, in fact, when he died, he told Mama that I must coordinate the whole funeral because I believed as he did and I would know what was right. So what he said to me was, he threw the bones and he looked and he looked and he scratched his beard and he highbowed and he, everything else, and said, you don't have any white ancestors.
Wow. Okay.
And I said, well, I have a few, but they hide.
I wonder.
Yeah. I always thought, so the people, my old people, when I was a child, all had brown skin. Okay. All of them. Which was why I was looking at my own skin and wondering.
Why? Yes.
So that never, it's always been, I've even had skin cancer 2 or 3 times. Like I don't.
Wow.
I am until I came here and changed my life, I was never comfortable in my own skin. So I have tried to connect with my white ancestors. My grandmother, my mother's mother, and I were very, very close. And we used to speak without words. Like, she was definitely more like me. I remember sitting and shucking peas and things in the garden and speaking without it coming out our mouths. Yeah. So, and she was part Native American, I understand. Some people say not, but I need to do one of those swabs and find out for sure one day.
Please.
I will. Yeah, wouldn't that be interesting? We can do another chat after I do that. And so I have to really make an effort to connect with that side. I can also connect with my other grandmother's Irish side. When I went to Ireland, I felt quite connected. Yeah. But predominantly my ancestors are not white. And so I've asked them a lot about this. I've thought a lot about this. And especially when I was up in the bush of the first couple of years alone, I left this, what people would see as an ideal life in Washington, D.C., with a big house and a big diamond and a Mercedes and, all of that, and going to the White House and all of those things. Yeah, which led me to meeting Desmond Tutu in the White House and him telling me it was time to come home.
To come home, yes.
So I can't, as I said, I can't say that I know for sure, and I don't think we're meant to know. But it has always been, like, the show Roots came out in America when I was quite young, and I couldn't watch it. I just couldn't watch it. When I went to the South and visited the homes, which I did actually in New Orleans, outside New Orleans, just before I came here, but I had done it earlier too, off and on for all my adult life. When I went to plantations and when I was in the slave cabins and things like that, like I connected so deeply with that. It was incredibly painful. And I could hear their stories. But in the big house, I didn't connect with that. So I don't really know. And that's what's led me to really study and to really pray and to really, and that's what's led me to what I just explained to you. You know, what I see is that it was just fear. My guess is that I came in white skin so that I could experience life as a white person and come here and then understand, you know, Baba named me Nomadlozi because, which means with the ancestors, because he believed, how would I have ever found, you know, they live in this little rural place up on a mountain, you know,
in the middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere. How would I have found my way home if I hadn't been there before?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't give you a definitive answer, but those are kind of my thoughts.
It's quite interesting for me. Very, very interesting. And I know that for the viewers, it will be quite as interesting as well. But I think, what would you say, Gogo, to people who would say, oh, here's another white person trying to take our belief and package it neatly and sell it again to the world? What would you say? Because you did mention earlier that there's a lot of people, especially where you are, who just think, oh, nango munye mlungu, like here's another white person.
Another one.
Yeah, here's another. Yes.
Yes. Well, you know, there was that Isolezwe Santo article, and it was posted on Facebook, and the comments, if you look at them, there are a number of people who think, maybe because I lived in Washington before I came, that I'm with the CIA. Which is not the case. There are a number of people who believe that I am just coming to profit off this, that I'm going to make a movie, and I might make a movie, but for different reasons. I'm being approached about it a lot right now. That I, so that I, you know, I'm just wanting to take it and profit off of it. Some that I'm coming to brainwash people. You know, I mean, there's some really, you know, I've had death threats. I mean, the people either love me or hate me. Yeah. And people close to me, people who I've taken under my wing as children, as adult children, people who I loved with my whole heart and did far too much for, to support and to help. The community that I first did a lot of work in and developed a foundation to work in, have turned on me. And some of those comments are by people like that. And I can't care about that. You know, I can't let it stop me. I believe my calling is this: to poke hole. I've been saying this from the beginning. You know, those, and when you're in the bush in the mountains, those deep dark clouds that come, you know, above. In Gwenya, the community that I was first in, where my family is a challenged place. So my thing is, from the beginning, I saw this in a dream, was to poke holes in those clouds and let some light through. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of jealousy. There's a lack of opportunity for young people there. They have to leave in order to further themselves in any way. And I set about trying to help with that. And I got quite an education, and I lost a great deal of money. That everything was funded through my personal retirement money. And I learned, and I learned, and I learned. And all of that, what didn't work out, pushed me more, because really I didn't want to be a white Sangoma. I didn't want to be seen this way, you know, and I'm quite a private person. So to speak about this is all for the ancestors, not for my own It's not. I love talking with you. This is easy, but a lot of it is not. And to allow myself to be seen when I was taught as a child that we must act normal. And we mustn't, everything must look good. And the truth, as much as we were shouted at if we lied, but we were taught to change the truth. Whereas now all I can do is tell the truth.
Tell the truth.
So the reason I came is I believe, is to help Black African people see just who they are and to help them become who they truly are. I do this with white people as well, who they truly are versus who they were told they should be. So the religion, the whitewashing is part of that. The believing that you are less than because your skin is dark and your nose is wide and your hair doesn't straighten as well as mine does when someone else does it. To see the beauty and the gifts, and that you are as worthy and as capable and as strong and as powerful, maybe more so, than anyone who is lighter than you. These things that, that's why I'm here. Like watching young women bleach their skin, and old women bleach their skin. Watching a grown Zulu man be treated as a boy. Or act like even worse, act like a boy.
Act like a boy.
Just to get money, eat more easily than maybe doing what he came to do. Those things make my heart bleed. They deeply, deeply sadden and they cause me grief. That's why I came. People can believe that or not. They can believe whatever they want. But if it, either in a negative or a positive way, it helps people wake up, fine. That's fine.
That's fine. Wow. I think for me, just listening to you and reading your story, it's really put me in a place where I've been asking God a lot of questions, especially after I approached you for this interview, preparing for it, trying to figure out your story, and then thinking to myself, was everything that I grew up being told true? Well, yes, to a certain degree it is true, but seeing you as a white woman stand so firmly in, I could say, my my culture, on my, what's supposed to be my belief, it's really made me look at things and look at life from a different perspective. And it's made me question a lot of things, not to question how I grew up, but question belief, question spirituality. And I also think, I almost feel like I have a, not a dysphoria, but an identity crisis. And considering everyone else around me, every African or Black person that's around me, I think a lot of us might just have an identity, a spiritual identity crisis, especially from what you've just shared. Sorry, I cut you there. You were about to say something.
No, not at all. I'm just thinking that my job is done. This is what I came to do.
Yeah, because I feel, I don't know, I feel that there's still so many things that we need to discover. And I feel like with my trip coming to Italy, like I told you, I felt like there's a part of myself that I am still searching for, or I have questions about, and not to disregard how I grew up and what I was taught, but it's like there's more. It's like there's more.
Yes. And there's the and. It's not either or, it's and.
And.
Sihle, when you're driving, right? If you keep your eye in the rearview mirror the whole time, what's going to happen?
I'm going to get a crash. I'm not going to see anything else.
You're going to go off the road, you're going to crash, whatever, right? you check the rearview mirror just fleetingly now and then, especially if you're driving with taxis, just to care, right? But your eyes are going forward. Yes?
Yes.
Life is like that.
Wow.
There's nothing wrong with what your parents did, what your ancestors did. There's really, there's forgive and yet not forget so much that you're not looking to take the gold out of that. Colonization, as you said, all over the world has we could make it a very, very negative thing. And, I'm not a fan. Let's put it that way. I'm definitely.
The network cards. Hello? Gogo?
Yes?
Okay, I can hear you now. Sorry, you cut there for a second.
Well, the beauty of being in South Africa. It's saying my internet connection is unstable. There's no reason for that, but it's a cloudy day, so could be clouds. There's no way we can go back and change the fact that the world's been colonized. There's no way we can change the fact that millions of Black African people were made to follow Christian religions.
Religion, yes.
Or other religions, other than what they were intended to do. And it doesn't all have to be bad. Like there are some gifts in there, that we can pull out. I don't think the way the world is right now, I don't think that it hurts any to believe that you are supported not only from below, we rise on the shoulders of those who went before us, and also protected from above. We can all use as much support and protection as we can get, right?
We definitely can.
The world is going through, it seems to me, and to those I follow, shifts, huge shifts. And I think this is part of that shift. I really do. I won't, in this body, I put in an order for a different body the next time. It's like, all right, I'm doing this once, but not again.
Not again.
Not again. So, fine, I'll do this, but no more. But in this body, I won't see the kinds of changes that I want to see, or that you will see, or that your children will see, or your grandchildren. But what I can do, what all of us can do now, is plant the seeds for change. If we keep looking at and being angry with the fact that colonization happened, we're not doing anything to change it. We are, in fact, just in a neural pathway. If you, old record albums, how the needle would get stuck. A neural pathway is like that. If we continue to focus on what went wrong and on colonization and on the fact that, African tradition spiritually is evil and, all those kinds of things, then we're only going to cut that groove deeper. So what I try to do is introduce people to other possibilities and the word "and," that both can be true. Both can be good.
So in other words, you're saying that we can marry both, for example, Christianity and African belief or African tradition. Okay.
Of course.
Okay.
There are people who will tell you can't. It's not that African traditional spirituality isn't without its faults either. They make, I on purpose am not in my Duke and my, I have some of my things on, but I'm not in my full gear, which I will be later for a photojournalist who's coming as we're doing a ceremony. But in both are true. This person is me and that person is me. They both are. So someone saw me at Shizunyama at Max's, or they saw a photo of me at Max's and said, "Hi, how can Gogo?" And it's like, no, that is also true, right?
Yes, Gogo at
So
Max.
I can go to Max's. I can do that. You can get on an airplane and be in Italy and still be a daughter of South Africa and represent the country beautifully and in a true way, an honest way. So it just, it's all possible. It's all possible.
Wow. Wow.
If for some people, first of all, if we believe in both for a while, then that allows in generations us to perhaps steer backwards. I don't know. But you don't want to, you don't want to destabilize people by making, just like Black African spirituality was made evil by the Christians, by the colonizers. We don't then want to make Christianity evil. Because
that's true.
That's payback, but it doesn't really help anyone.
No.
So each person, I think, really has to, and it will depend on their ancestors and what they came from, and their intentions going forward, and their purpose in coming to this life. They may have some people may have a 75-25 mix. Some may be 25-75, maybe 50-50, and some people make a big shift. But traditional spirituality has also done a lot to embody that fierceness and that power, and to make them seem, big and scary.
Yes.
And while, some people do find me intimidating, and my ancestors are very strong, so I can be very straight. In individual sessions, I'm much softer than that, because we're inviting, we're not commanding.
Yes.
And then there are also, just like in Christianity, I think that same stringent, this is the way and the only way, has also bled into traditional practices. There are groups that I'm involved with online, and it's like a yellow candle must only be used for this, and you must patla at midnight, at 3 a.m, at 6 a.m, every day. Guess what? I don't.
That's true.
Sometimes I do. If I wake up and I'm called to, I will. Sometimes I do. I am known to get up in the middle of the night and go patla, but I don't follow someone else's rules. And you get in these groups, and you get, just like anyone on Facebook, these like fights going on in the comments. And it's like, guy, hey.
I've seen them.
How are we supposed to invite people back to this when we're making it a war ground? So, it's not that there aren't problems on both sides.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I also find, like, when I, because I'm very inquisitive, when I read other people's comments, especially when it comes to African spirituality, I read a lot of people bashing Christianity, which then I feel puts me off as a Christian, because I genuinely want to learn and understand, maybe with certain things I may not really believe, but just to understand it. So when people are bashing Christianity and saying bad things about Christ, I then feel like I need to go away, because, like you said, it's all I've known, and it's what has worked for me all of my life.
And you've grown into a beautiful young woman. I mean, and you've done amazing things. So what's wrong there, right?
Yes.
And that's where it comes down to, what can we add to it to help you continue to grow and to feel you represent our country, and to help you represent, the country and your own personal history, your family history more fully.
Yes.
And that's what I mean. It's, here's the thing. Jesus Christ was not the colonizer. Jesus was not a colonizer.
Yeah, that's true.
People did that.
That is very true. That is very, very true. I just think, sorry, were you saying something, Gogo?
Well, just the Bible, if you go back and you look at old versions of the Bible, like there were these things called the Gnostic Gospels. Have you ever read anything about that?
No, I just know about the oldest version of the Bible, which is not the Bible that we're reading right now. I'm not sure if that's the same thing.
No, and the colonizers are the ones who retranslated the Bible. Human beings did that. Just like that child game, the telephone, where you start in a circle of kids and you start saying one thing and it comes out completely different at the other end. Yes. That's happened with the Bible. The Gnostic Gospels, which were in that first version, I mentioned this the other day, they talked about Mary Magdalene in a very different way than the current Bible does.
Yes.
So, those are more effects of colonization, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's why, it's a little, we had Sansusis like Baba Credo Mutwa, who kept the stories of the Zulu people, and the tribe that I am in Zulu. So I'm not speaking only, there are many tribes and different beliefs, but this is the one I know, and I came home to. And he actually published a lot of these stories that were never to be told about, but he saw that we were losing these stories, or that they were being used either against Christianity, or they were being used against, and he believed in both as well. They were being used against the spiritualist. So that's one of my goals, is to actually do audiobooks of his books so that we can reach a larger audience. I'm very grateful to him for having spilled the beans and put the stories out there, so it's not my fault for doing it. Because in this body, I don't know if I have the courage to do that. But since he already did,
you might as well.
Then I might as well.
Yes.
So, that's something that's in the works. I just think a lot of this is about having compassion for yourself and for your family and for other people. And acceptance. And this is where the things that we've talked about before, the guilt and the shame, and the this is bad, lighter skin, even if you're black, is better than dark skin, and
yes.
all of those. And you want to marry up, you marry,
it's a lot.
So it's crazy. It's damaging. It's damaging. And all we're doing is being puppets and repeating what those people who were afraid of us, of Black people, and people who believe what we believe, all we're doing is making it, is repeating their words and their beliefs, and doing damage to ourselves and to those who will come after us and those who came before us.
And
that's sad.
That's very, very true. Gogo, I think people would be interested to know, how does Gogo do her consultations? Do you do them like a normal African sangoma, or do you do them the medium way, where you just connect with those who are deceased or who are not here anymore in the physical?
Right. I do typically, these are unusual times, right? So typically I do them in the traditional way. I have I'll pivot and show you right out there. Can you see my house?
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
There you go. There. Wow. And we have a dam on the property. And so I do that for people I know. Unfortunately, as I said, there have been, a lot of threats against me and a lot of trouble. And so I don't do it right now, and also COVID. So I don't do it right now with people I don't know.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I do a lot in person here. This is also my home and my family's home. So out of an abundance of caution, both with COVID and with negativity, I only do that with people I've been working with online.
Okay.
When COVID started, people started asking me, so I am a medium. I've never used that word. I say that I channel things, but I am a very strong one. So the things that I do in person, I throw bones, I heal with my hands. I'm trained in a thing called Reiki. I do whatever's needed to do. When COVID started, people started asking me to work online. And while I've been doing counseling and other work online for teaching for a long time, and I'm very comfortable with Zoom, I live on Zoom at the time, I really hesitated because I felt like, because I'm white, I really need to do things traditionally. I really need to adhere. And my ancestors kept showing me things kept happening. And there is a very simple, easy way that I am able to connect online now. So I do sessions online, and it is more about mediumship. It's basically, and that's where this sort of, without me trying, this practice of helping Black Africans who were raised Christian connect with their ancestors came about. Okay. So that's only part of my work. Okay. I charge much more traditional prices for that. And I do a certain number of those a week, especially as I've been writing the book. Once this book is out in the world, my time hopefully will free up a bit. But I do that as respect to my ancestors, and as an offering, I charge the minimum of 200 Rand a session. So, make it very affordable for people. And I run, also to make it accessible for people, I've started a group on Facebook, a Gogo Nomadlozi page, where I just talk about things like we're talking about on lives and things. I'll be doing more of that and answer general questions. I don't read candles or do dreams. I don't really think that's terribly responsible, to be honest, because I think that, like, when I do a session online or in person, I am connecting with your ancestors, and I can't just look at a Facebook feed and say, well,
I
don't think anyone should. My personal belief is it's not responsible, but I can answer general questions for sure, and teach things, about poshing and general practices and things like that. So I try to make a certain amount of my time accessible for just that kind of thing.
Okay. So should I link, obviously, the link to your page on how people can gain access to you and how people can book you for any readings? Would that be fine?
Sure. There's a phone number that's just WhatsApp only, where people can reach me, and just ask.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry. There's a phone number where people can WhatsApp me about consulting, and then they can ask questions in the Facebook group as well. I am at the point where I just can't answer people on Messenger. I'm just sending a standard reply with all my connections because it's a little insane.
Too much. I can imagine.
Something done if I just did that.
I can imagine. Gogo, thank you so much for agreeing to have this chat with me, and just to educate my viewers, educate myself. The one thing that I've taken away from this interview is just how much healing that we need to do from our past to be able to, I guess, live a better future. That's what I've received from you, is just realizing that actually when colonizers came, how fearful they were of being here, and their fear drove them to do all the horrible things that they did to our ancestors. And I just really believe that all we need is to have such conversations and for our races to just heal before we can just move on. So thank you.
Completely. I hope that if you write up a little bit, that you'll talk a little bit about how we met. Do you remember that day?
Yes, I do remember that day. And interestingly enough, when we met, I didn't want to mention this, but I will because you brought it up. I remember when I saw you, something in me said, I'm still going to see you again. And you said to me, you need to get her contact. I forgot who you were working with. You said, you need to get her contact, pointing at me, and we need to get her a book. We need to get her a book so that she can read it. I was like, how does this lady know me?
But I do, and I'm delighted to talk with you. Happy to do this anytime. I look forward to more.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You don't know how much this means to me. And I really hope that everyone enjoyed this interview as much as I did. I will definitely tag and put down Gogo Nomadlozi Buthelezi's details in the description column. And I really hope that all of us can get to a point where we start questioning where we come from, questioning our ancestry, because I do believe that there's nothing wrong in questioning. And maybe you could learn a thing or two about yourself in the process. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I hope we never stop learning.
Yes.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notification buttons to get more on my podcast, Unfiltered, with me, Sihle Makhanya.